Welcome! Today we're digging into one of the most intense, most explosive moments in American religious history. Seriously, it's a story about a city on the absolute edge, a controversial newspaper, and a single decision that ultimately led to the murder of a prophet. This is the story of the day Joseph Smith died and the crisis that followed.
So let's just jump right into the tragic climax. The date is June 27, 1844. And these words, they're from an eyewitness, describing the very moment an armed mob stormed Carthage jail. In a terrifying flash of violence, the prophet Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram were killed. But how in the world did they end up in that jail cell? To get that, we have to rewind and look at the spark that lit the whole fuse.
To really get what happened, we need to see it through the eyes of someone who was right there in the middle of it all, Apostle John Taylor. He wasn't just in the room when the shots rang out, he was the leader in the city of Nauvoo, and he had a front-row seat to the whole escalating conflict that led them all to Carthage.
The attack was just unbelievably brutal. John Taylor was hit 4 times, and honestly, his survival was nothing short of a miracle. It made him the living, breathing testimony of this entire crisis. So using his perspective, let's look at Nauvoo in 1844. The city had become a total powder keg. It was one of the largest cities in Illinois, and the Saints were facing danger not just from angry mobs on the outside, but from former friends on the inside.
John Taylor was with him living when this internal betrayal really kicked off. A group of former church leaders, we're talking high-ranking people, including a one-time member of the First Presidency, published a newspaper called the Nauvoo Expositor, and it accused Joseph Smith of some really explosive things, secretly practicing polygamy and trying to set himself up as some kind of king. You can imagine how that went over.
So this attack from within, it created a situation that put the entire church on the brink. Joseph Smith, acting as the mayor of Nauvoo, got the city council together and they declared the newspaper a public nuisance. They ordered the printing press destroyed. Now here's a key detail. While destroying the papers themselves might have been legally defensible, smashing the physical press was seen as illegal and a direct attack on free speech. And that was a huge mistake.
That single act put the keystone of the church, Joseph, in a ton of danger. Right away, charges of riot were filed against Joseph and Hiram. And then things escalated fast. The charge was upgraded to treason, a capital crime with zero option for bail. And the reason? It was based on Joseph calling out the Nauvoo Legion, the city's militia, to protect Nauvoo from mob violence.
So with Joseph and Hiram locked up in Carthage jail, facing a treason charge, the unthinkable suddenly became a very real possibility. What if they were killed? It would create this massive power vacuum, raising the terrifying question, who on earth would lead next? In that chaotic summer of 1844, several prominent figures stepped forward, and each one of them had what looked like a legitimate claim.
All right, let's break down the main contenders. First up, you've got Sidney Rigdon. He was the last surviving member of the First Presidency, and he argued he should be the guardian of the church. Then there was William Smith, Joseph's own brother, who claimed the right as the presiding patriarch. Some people even thought Joseph's young son should inherit the role. And finally, you had the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, led by Brigham Young.
But the answer to this whole crisis, the solution that would actually hold the church together, it wasn't found in a single person. No, it was found in a governing body that Joseph Smith had quietly been preparing for this exact moment.
Now, to understand what happened next, we have to talk about the doctrine of priesthood keys. The easiest way to think about them is like the master keys to a huge building. They represent the ultimate authority to preside over and direct everything the church does on earth. The person who holds all the keys is the president of the church. Simple as that.
And here it is. This is the answer that most members had no idea about at the time. In the months right before his death, Joseph Smith met with the 12 apostles and, one by one, he gave them every single key, power, and authority that he had. The leadership mantle wasn't just passed to one man, it was passed to a whole quorum.
And this just brilliantly shows the scriptural foundation for their claim. Check this out. A revelation given way back in 1835 had already established that if the First Presidency was ever dissolved, say by death, the Quorum of the 12 was designed to step in as a presiding body with equal authority. They were built to hold the keys collectively.
So what happened next wasn't just some temporary fix for 1844. It actually solidified this orderly, automatic process of succession that has ensured a seamless transfer of leadership and prevented a crisis like this from ever happening again.
That totally chaotic moment created the clear 3-step pattern the church has followed ever since.
When a prophet passes away, the First Presidency dissolves. That's step 1. Then, the Quorum of the 12, since they already hold all the keys, immediately becomes the presiding authority. That's step 2. Then, that quorum gets together and reorganizes the First Presidency, with the senior apostle, the guy who served the longest, becoming the next president of the church. Step 3. Smooth, orderly, no chaos.
And that really brings us to our final thought here. What started with betrayal, legal chaos, and horrific violence in a jail cell ultimately revealed a divinely prepared pattern for order and continuity. So the question for you is, how does knowing that the church navigated its most dangerous, most chaotic moment affect how you view its leadership and its claim to divine guidance today? Something to think about.